Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Please visit audiblepodcast.com/gems for your free audiobook download. Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 122. More and more these days we are seeing the term forensic genealogist popping up all over the place. But have you ever wondered what it really means? And how is a forensic genealogist different from any other genealogist? Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk to a forensic genealogist that I met recently who's going to explain it all to us. But first, let's go over some of the most recent genealogy news. First up, NBC has just announced that the TV series Who Do You Think You Are will be returning to television screens here in the U.S. on Friday, February 3rd at 8 p.m. Since this falls at the same time as the RootsTech conference, I wouldn't be surprised if they plan another group screening for attendees. I think they did that last year and it was a big hit. And speaking of RootsTech, we just had a quick little contest on the Genealogy Gems news blog, and we ran it in the newsletter. It was offering a chance for one lucky reader to win a free RootsTech 2012 registration. Your task was to visit the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel, which you'll find at youtube.com/genealogygems. And your job was to find an answer to 3 simple questions. And of all the correct answers, Carol Genung, I hope I'm saying that right, Carol. It's Genung. It kind of sounds like a genealogy name, doesn't it? Was randomly drawn as the lucky winner. So not only has Carol won a full RootsTech registration, but she's also going to be featured in a video interview on the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel. Carol, you're going to be a star. Now, in addition to teaching 2 classes and conducting a workshop at RootsTech, I'm also going to be there. I'll have a booth in the exhibit hall, and I'm going to be conducting filmed interviews in the media hub, which is kind of located in the center of the exhibit hall. So hopefully I will meet up with Carol there and talk with her about her experience there at RootsTech, as well as many of the people who will be there speaking and exhibiting at the show. So I really look forward to seeing you, Carol. And hopefully many of you who are listening. You know, there's still plenty of time to register for the conference. You can go to rootstech.org. And for those of you who are unable to attend, of course, I'll have the videos that bring the experience to you via your computer in the comfort of your own home. And in addition to putting together the 2nd annual RootsTech conference, the folks over at Family Search have really been very busy lately. They're adding more historical records to the free Family Search website. They have added a wide range of new records. They come from about 20 different countries, including Australia, Austria, Canada, Chile, England, the Dominican Republic, Germany, Italy, the Philippines, and the U.S. And the U.S. editions include records from California, Illinois, Indiana, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. So if any of those ring a bell as some place that you have been waiting for new records to come out, you might want to go check out familysearch.org. And there is news from Roots Magic, who also happens to be the sponsor of this free podcast. They have just released a minor update. It's called 4.1.2.1. which fixes a few of the different issues they've found along the way. So if you have the Roots Magic news screen that comes up when you first start Roots Magic, it may have already notified you that there was an update available. But if not, you can go to the menu and you just go to Help and then check for updates to download and install the update. I'll have a link in the show notes for you as well to the Roots Magic blog post that has more information on the update. And did you know that Google just celebrated a birthday? It was in September. They turned 15. Google's a teenager. The teenage years, right? But they also had another milestone that they hit recently, and that is more than 1 billion downloads for Google Earth. Yes, B with a billion. pretty amazing. I will have a link to their blog post at the gearthblog.com blog that kind of tells you more about that. But that is just amazing. And certainly amongst those billion are a few genealogists, of course, because we all love using Google Earth for genealogy. And that's pretty cool to see that it's certainly going strong. And that's a good thing also, because that means they're going to keep supporting it. And that's what we want, right? No changes with Google Earth, except for upgrades. Okay, and finally, as you may remember, in Genealogy Gems podcast episode, it was number 119, I spoke with Michael Katchen of 1000memories.com about their new website. And they have launched a new free iPhone app. It's called Shoebox. And they say that it's like putting a scanner in your pocket. Pretty cool. I will have links in the show notes where you can read more about it, and you can actually watch a little video that they put together. I'll have that in the show notes for you as well. Kind of gives you a quick overview. Now, even though this is an iPhone app, it also works on the iPad. In fact, most iPhone apps do work and are compatible with the iPad. And being an image-focused app like the 1000 Memories Shoebox app is, it's really ideally suited, of course, for that rich display that you get with the iPad. But also it's really nice. You could have something just the size of your iPhone, be able to snap a picture of something, even if it's another photograph. Let's say you're out visiting the relatives. Grandma pulls out a box of these old photographs and you need to be able to capture them right then and there. You snap them with your Shoebox app using your iPhone. You can do a little bit of cropping and adjusting and then save it. I believe it saves them as JPEG files. And then you can send them to yourself. You can send them to other people and share them on your 1000 Memories page. So it's a pretty cool feature. I downloaded it to my iPad. Works like a charm. It really did a great job. Actually, it was a very nice scanned image. And I was able to email it to myself and then be able to use it from there. So you can check that out at 1000memories.com. And speaking of iPad and using the iPad for genealogy and all the various apps that are out there and kind of making heads or tails of that, that is something we are covering in depth in the Genealogy Gems Premium podcast. I hope that you have become a member recently or renewed, because this is really going to prove, I think, very helpful, particularly because you never know what Santa's going to bring. And, apps and mobile genealogy isn't just about the iPad. Of course, the iPad is kind of the high-end, expensive end of things. But there are all kinds of tablets coming out. Certainly Google has Android-run tablets, and these can be fantastic resources for doing genealogy on the go. And I say on the go, but really I use mine every day, even around the house. So in the current premium podcast, we are covering, in the last episode, which I think was 79. Oh my gosh. Senior moment here. I can't remember. I think it was 79. We covered some of the non-genealogy type apps that are out there, but that can do functions that you need the iPad to do in order to be really efficient in doing your family history research. And I am just now putting together, and will be publishing very soon, in just the next couple of days, the next episode, number 80, which is going to have we're just going to scour the genealogy apps that are out there, make heads or tails of them, bring out the best gems that you're going to want to focus on, so that I'm going to do all the legwork for you. You're going to be able just to kind of load it up and try out your tablet and your apps, and hopefully get out there and be able to do so much more in such a flexible way with having that small little computing gadget in your hand. They're just slick. I am so sold. But I'll tell you more about it in the premium podcast. You're just going to have to check it out. If you want to become a premium member, if you haven't done it yet, well, maybe should be your Christmas present to you. Or you could, drop a little hint to somebody in your family. But I think you're really going to enjoy. We've got some great podcast episodes lined up. Plus, I just added another full hour class presentation that I did recently at the Southern California Genealogical Society Jamboree on Google search strategies. That complete video is now up and part of your premium membership. So adding lots and lots of more content like that. So if you're not able to make it out to a conference, and although I love meeting you all in person, you have a chance to also attend some of my classes right there from the comfort of premium membership, as well as the monthly podcasts that come out and other tutorial videos. So got lots of great goodies there for you. Okay, well, before we talk to our forensic genealogist, I want to talk to you, and we're going to do that over at the mailbox.
From my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that she's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Okay, we are here in the mailbox. You know, I had the distinct pleasure of being invited up to Victoria, British Columbia, Canada in October of 2012 to give a full-day seminar on using Google for genealogy. I had such a marvelous time, and I've had the pleasure of hearing from several of you who were there in attendance that day, including this email from Mike. He wrote in to say, I met you briefly at the Friday night coffee chat before your presentation the next day in Victoria, BC. I couldn't make the seminar, sadly, but my better half, Kate, went, and she came home brimming over with ideas, 2 books, a couple of DVDs, and a ton of excitement. We've been putting some of your ideas to great use and having some walls get knocked down. Yes, that's awesome. He says, outstanding stuff. I've also started listening to the Genealogy Gems podcast, starting with number 21. And in the first episode, I already found some great hints on how to get U.S. naval records for my great-grandfather. Where have you been all my life? Haha. Right here. Come on, Mike, right here. He says, thank you again for everything you do for the genealogical community. You are one of the genealogy gems. Ah. That is so nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I take that as quite a compliment. And I really enjoyed meeting Kate. What a sweetheart. We got a chance to chat for a few minutes at the seminar during the day. So we missed you, Mike, but I'm really glad that you're able to make good use of all the goodies that she brought home. Now, another topic causing the mailbox to overflow was my interview with Steve Luxenberg and his wonderful book, Annie's Ghost. Maureen posted on my Facebook wall. She says, Genealogy Gems episodes 120 and 121 are, by far, 2 of the best family history research podcasts that I've ever heard. Steve Luxenberg, author of Annie's Ghost, was full of great research ideas. These podcasts are keepers. Ah, thank you, Maureen. And Brandt also posted, he says, thanks for the interviews with Steve Luxenberg and the recommendation for Annie's Ghosts. I loved the book, and the interviews added a lot to it. Hope he writes another one soon. Oh, me too. I keep nudging him. Come on. I want to see the next one. And Lorraine posted on the Genealogy Gems Facebook fan page as well, saying, Annie's Ghost by Steve Luxenberg is excellent. I can't put it down. It's thanks to you, Lisa, that I discovered the book after listening to your podcast. I can so sympathize with Steve in his quest, as I have a similar issue in my family that is oh so sensitive. Well done to Steve for portraying these issues, which must affect so many people researching their family histories in such an articulate way. It makes you feel that you are not alone. Ah, well said, Lorraine. And Julie emailed me to say, I just had to tell you how enjoyable your interview with Steve Luxenberg was. After the first part, I immediately ordered his book for Kindle through your site, of course. Oh, thank you very much for supporting the show, and started it right away. It is compelling reading, and I am hooked on it. I find reading it on the iPad works better to see his photos in better resolution. Oh, that is so true, Julie. That is so true. What a great story, she says, told by a quality storyteller. I find it hard to put it down and look forward to getting back to it as quickly as possible. Perhaps you need to start a good reads section in your podcasts or newsletters. Hooked on your podcast and trying to catch up on them all. Hey, I think that's an excellent idea. We could have our own Genealogy Gems book club too. What do you think? That could be a lot of fun. If that sounds interesting to anybody out there, drop me an email. Let me know what you think, or post on the Genealogy Gems Facebook wall and let me know if you'd be game for that. And maybe how you think it might work, how we might pull it off. Or if you have a book that you would like to recommend that we do that with. Certainly I enjoy recommending really good books and really good movies that I find, and it would be really fun to read one of them all together, wouldn't it? Wonderful idea. Thank you so much, Julie. Okay, we're going to put that on our to-do list for 2012. And you'll be happy to know that Steve says that you can find out more about the book at steveluxenberg.com. And there are documents posted there under the Behind the Book section that aren't part of the print edition. So that's a little bonus for you. So you will definitely want to go check out his website. And of course, if you decide to pick up a copy of Annie's Ghosts, if you do that through our Amazon links, that would be wonderful. It supports the show. We love that. And I just noticed that I forgot to put the Amazon link search box back on the front page. I did reinstate it to the toolbar, but anyway, I fixed it. So it's there. It's in the upper right-hand corner. I appreciate it. A lot of you guys have been doing your Christmas shopping through there. I really appreciate that you're supporting the show financially, keeping the free podcast up and running. That's awesome. So I'll have links to all of that, including Steve's website, for you in the show notes. And there's another topic that we've discussed here on the show that you've been continuing to write me about, and that is the terms of endearment for our grandparents. Dr. Lugay sent me an iPad note saying the terms for our family are Noni and Poppy. Oh, that's cute. And here's a really cute one from Sharon. She says, when my son was born, my father would lean over him and put his hand on his belly and shake him a little bit, saying, you little bum, you little bum. Well, guess what my son started calling Grandpa from the moment he could form the word bum. And it stuck. My parents ended up being Ma and Bum to my son. I'm not sure how he came up with the Ma thing either. And remember that we were out somewhere in a crowd, always a crowd, and my son sees his grandfather and bellows out loud and clear, hey, bum, and ran over to him, and we were all laughing so hard by the startled looks on the faces of unknowing, innocent bystanders. My father has since passed away, and my son, who is 35, still calls his grandfather Bum. As always, Lisa, thanks for informative and entertaining podcasts. Thank you, Sharon. That is a wonderful story. I love that. Now, in this next email, longtime listener Pat poses an interesting question. She writes, I've been thinking about something that might make an interesting survey kind of question, perhaps here on your Facebook page. Oh, she must have posted this. I think it was on our Genealogy Gems fan page on Facebook. If you're not a fan, go over and join us, like us, whatever it is we do on Facebook. She says, today we highly value old photographs of our ancestors. Having any at all is very satisfying, as photos in general were rare until a certain time period. What do you think our descendants will wish that they had of ours 100 years in the future? There's likely to be zillions of photographs, but what is rare today that might become much more commonplace in the future that our descendants will wish we had done? I know, rotten grammar, but I hope the sentiment is clear. Maybe DNA samples for research? I'm just wondering. And Pat went on to say that, DNA studies for genealogy are still considered very, quite new, and sometimes they're even looked upon with some skepticism. Maybe kind of like photography was back in the day. She says, thanks for all you do to make the world of family history exciting every day. Well, thank you, Pat. And what a terrific question. I think these very early DNA studies that we're doing today are going to be looked back at with great interest. I mean, just the fact that we were dabbling in this, in the very early days, and who knows, maybe they'll have a bit of humor in looking back at it as well, just as technology progresses. And of course, it moves so quickly. But, what kind of comes to mind to me is the one thing that is becoming more rare today, but it's been around forever, is our own handwriting. Everyone used to write letters, and yet today we call, we text, and we email. And yet handwriting is so personal. I think perhaps our descendants will be yearning for those rare handwriting examples. And I'd love to hear what the rest of you listening out there think might be something. What do you think our descendants are going to be yearning to get their hands on in the future to learn more about us? You can email me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com or leave a voicemail at the voicemail line 925-272-4021. Next up, I have a note here from Lori. She writes, I listened to a couple of your sessions at the 2011 Southern California Genealogical Society Jamboree this past June, and I learned so much about Google and Google Earth. Bought your Toolbox book as well. Great book. Just started listening to your podcast, and I'm hooked. Question for you. If I become a premium member, how do I listen on my iPod? Or is that only available on the computer? Well, thank you, Lori. And of course, as I just mentioned, that one of those presentations, the Google search presentation from Jamboree, is now part of your premium membership. So you'll be able to go back over that and brush up on some of your search strategies. But as a premium member, you can add our custom premium membership iTunes feed to your iTunes and subscribe to the premium podcasts. All the instructions are there in the show notes for that welcome episode. It's the first episode there in the premium membership area. And another option, of course, is that you can download the MP3 files from the website and you can manually add them to your iPod or your MP3 player if you want to as well. But we do have a specific, unique premium podcast feed that you can add to iTunes. It's a one-time ad, and then it should automatically go in and search for the new episodes as you use it. It'll prompt you to sign in with your username and password, and then it just downloads them all for you. Very convenient. So thank you so much for asking. And Lisa wrote in recently with some questions around family health histories. She writes, I was recently told that I have breast cancer, and that got me thinking about what other medical issues I should be aware of. I was wondering if you could point me in the right direction for finding out my family medical history. I just started listening to your podcast and was hoping you could help. Well, Lisa, I am so sorry to hear about the diagnosis, and I hope that it's very early and very treatable for you. What I would suggest is, I think Google Books would be a great place to start, as they have all of the Ancestry magazines digitized and online. So if you do a quick search of medical history, it brings up several promising articles that you might want to check out. And I've got some here for you to get you started. And I will put the links, because they're kind of long and complicated website links. I'll put those links in the show notes for you. Hopefully you can just, click on those and it'll jump you into Google Books. But let me give you the titles of some of these articles. The first article I found was called Building a Tree of Prevention. And I think if you just do a search for that in Google Books, it will automatically bring it up for you. And then there's also Genealogy and Genetics. It's an article again from Ancestry magazine. And then there was one called Create a Family Health History. It's a section of a particular article from Ancestry. And then there was a Genograms article that has a health history focus as well. So I think that combination, and coming from a couple of different perspectives, those 4 articles would be a great way to get started. And they do reference some additional resources that you can pursue after that. So Lisa, hey, I wish you a very speedy recovery. I hope these resources are helpful to you. So take care, all right? And here's some feedback from Carrie on one of her favorite Genealogy Gems episodes. She writes, I love your podcast. I've learned so many things from you and your guests. Episode 119 was one of my favorites. Your story about the Barbie clothes and the sewing box brought back memories for me. I absolutely loved Barbies when I was growing up. My Aunt Christine, who's 4 years older than me, used to play with me. I loved to play with her. She was so creative and funny. Well, one year for Christmas, she made me a Barbie bedroom. It was made of wood, and she painted the outside blue, and the inside was painted white with bright decorative painting. She also painted a window on the inside. She made furniture and a bed with wood blocks covered with padding and actual upholstery, fabric, and nail heads. My grandpa had an upholstery business, and she used scraps from that. She made bedding for the beds and decorative pillows. I was so excited to get this. I still have this, and I did let my daughter play with it, but she wasn't into Barbies like I had been. She used to make Barbie clothes for me, too. What a great memory. Thanks for sparking that up. And this made me think that I need to document some of the other wonderful gifts that I've been given over the years that were handmade for me. They truly are special gifts. Another funny twist on your story, I was also given a green sewing box from my mom when I was young. Now, it didn't have Barbie stuff in it, but it had some sewing things so that I could make some hand-stitched items for my Barbies. Your stories on the grandparents and how they got their names also reminded me that I gave one of my grandpas the name Bumpa when I was little. As I got older, I switched to calling him Grandpa, though. Finally, I have a couple of questions that I was hoping you might have some insight on. Number 1. My great-great-grandmother came to America on a ship that sank, and they were rescued by a cattle ship that apparently brought people to at least 2 different ports. The ship that sank was the Denmark, and the ship that rescued them was the Missouri. I found stories about this incident. However, I was wondering how I might find some type of passenger list with her name on it. Do you have any suggestions? And question number 2, as you have stated in your podcast, it's time to work on Christmas gifts for the family. I'm going to make a perpetual calendar for a couple of years. It would include dates for births, marriages, deaths, dates arrived in America, and other very important dates. I'd like to do this for my grandmother's family and would include dates for her grandparents and siblings all the way down to my daughter's information. I want to have it be a wall calendar that I can have photos and miscellaneous information on the top and the month with the dates in perpetual form on the bottom. I have found some online, but the only size that I found was 5 by 11.5, and I was hoping to find the larger size to ensure that there's enough room for the photos and the information that I would show by each date. Do you know of anywhere that I might be able to get a calendar like this printed for several family members? Thanks for the great podcasts. Well, thank you so much for writing, Carrie, and sharing your memories. How funny that you not only played with the Barbies and had stuff made for you, but that you received a green sewing box as a child, like I did. And the Barbie bedroom just sounds amazing. Oh, what a labor of love. So, okay, let's see. Question number 1. In order to provide suggestions on how to find the passenger list, I would need to know the dates and the ports that they were sailing from and to. So if you want to email that to me, I'd be happy to take a look and hopefully provide some suggestions for you in a future episode. For question number 2, I ran your question past my friend Janet Havorica, who runs Family Chart Master, and she said that if it's on one sheet of paper and it's oversized, and if you can describe it to them, they could probably do it for you, because that's what they do is print up charts and graphs. They can do calendars, all kinds of printing. They can do any design that you want, and they'll put it up on a web page for you so that you can preview it and make sure that you're happy with it and kind of go back and forth until it's exactly the way you want it to be. And that's what's so cool about what Family Chart Masters does. So you can start that process for free on their consultation page. I will have a link for you in the show notes to get you over there. And if you want to send a genealogy file, any type of genealogy software, or even a Word document or something like that, they can take that information on birthdays and such and stick them on there if you want to. If you're looking for a more of a regular calendar that has multiple pages, they really don't do the multiple pages thing. But she said that her family usually does them at Costco, so you might want to check with Costco. And as far as my experience, now I did do a family calendar last year, I think it was, but it was more of the traditional kind. I did it at lulu.com, but they do have a premium calendar. It's a bit bigger, 13.5 by 19 inches. And that's in addition to their standard size, which is 11 by 17. I'm guessing you're talking about one big page that you can change over every month, but I'm having a hard time, I think, visualizing what you're describing. So may I suggest head over to Lulu and take a look and see their options, and maybe they will have one there that would help you. What I love about their stuff is their quality is excellent. and the turnaround time is really fast. It's amazing. And if you decide to use them, you can support this free podcast just by heading to the show notes. I'll have a link for you there. It's our affiliate link to lulu.com. And no matter what you end up getting over there, it'll help support the show. So we get credit for that. But I use them all the time. I use them to publish my books as well. So just because I really like the quality and I do like the speed. So hopefully between Family Chart Masters, Costco, or lulu.com, you're going to find somebody who might be able to do it. I would start with Family Chart Masters simply because they are the most customizable. They will really work with you back and forth until you get what you want. All right. Well, hang on, because coming up next, we are going to talk to a forensic genealogist.
From my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Before we get into our conversation with a forensic genealogist, I want to take this moment to thank our new sponsor, and that's Audible. If you're not familiar with Audible, Audible is the internet's leading provider of spoken audio entertainment. They have over 40,000 titles to choose from. If you have a genre that you like, they have it covered. If you go right now to audiblepodcast.com/gems, you can get yourself a free audiobook download when you sign up for the service. And if you're wondering which books to get with that free audiobook download, some titles you might want to take a look at are The View from Castle Rock by Alice Munro, or you could pick up Finding Oprah's Roots, Finding Your Own by Henry Louis Gates. And if neither of those genealogy titles tickle your fancy, don't worry, because there's 40,000 plus more to choose from. So again, go to audiblepodcast.com/gems. Are you looking to take the next step in your family history research and start recording your family tree in your own genealogy database? Or are you looking to make a switch to a more user-friendly genealogy software program? When my listeners and students ask me which program I prefer, I always recommend RootsMagic. It's the program I decided to make the switch to a couple of years ago, and I am so glad I did. You just won't find a more powerful genealogy software program, and building your family tree is easier than ever with the new RootsMagic 4. With RootsMagic, you can add unlimited facts, find anyone in your database with lightning speed with RootsMagic Explorer, quickly and easily create perfectly formatted sources with the RootsMagic Source Wizard. It makes it so easy. You can create customized reports, and best of all, you can now take RootsMagic wherever your research takes you with RootsMagic to Go, which lets you run RootsMagic directly off your flash drive. And RootsMagic makes it a snap to share your family history. You know how important I think that is. It'll help you publish a book, create stunning wall charts, shareable CDs, even create websites automatically from your data. Really, what are you waiting for? Download your risk-free trial of RootsMagic 4 and see why professionals and beginners alike choose RootsMagic at rootsmagic.com. Well, as you know, when I come to family history conferences and expos, I always go through the instructor list, and I look for people who I haven't met before and who are also talking about topics that we really haven't covered before here on the show. And this time, the name that popped out was Leslie Brinkley Lawson. And Leslie, first of all, I just want to say hi, nice to meet you, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here, too, because you're talking about a topic that I really haven't seen here at the Expo before. In fact, you have a couple of different ones, but of course, the one that caught my eye is the one that I think probably in some way touches every family history, but you almost never hear about it, which is researching people and families who really don't want anything to do with each other. Tell us the name of that class. I love it.
getting from then to now, locating people in the last century. And it's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Yeah. And you have cases in your work, and I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about what you do professionally and how that can tie into the fact that sometimes you do run into families who are adverse to somebody finding out the connections, or they don't really want to connect with the cousins that you're finding. Tell us about your work professionally.
I am a forensic genealogist. I spend my days working for mostly just for attorneys and a few private clients, but most of the time it's just the attorneys. We seek to find out who a person's parents might be. Many times they come to me and they say, I don't know who the parents are. I've got one attorney who does guardianships for mentally deficient people, and they can't help in participating in who their parents were. So my job is to figure that out, and usually by the time they need a guardian, they're not going to be here much longer, and so we need that information before they die. And then, of course, I have to find who the heirs to their estate will be. So that keeps me pretty busy.
And I imagine it's very logical that when you come to a situation where someone has, in a sense, gotten lost from the family or just disconnected, that might mean that there may be rifts, it may be even more challenges than the average family might run into. So you have to kind of dig into some territory in a very careful way, I would imagine, because you're exploring the living person, but then also the potential of, like you say, the inheritance down the road. What are some examples? You had mentioned to me on email when we were chatting back and forth some just interesting situations that you run into. Tell us one of those stories.
Well, I had one fellow, he was going to be an heir, or was an heir to an estate, and I had confirmed who his siblings were. And I had also ordered his father's obituary, and that had happened to arrive the next couple of days after I'd spoken to this man. And he had told me before I hung up, if you need anything else, you just call me. And I received the obituary to find that there were 3 more children listed in the father's obituary.
That he hadn't mentioned?
That he hadn't mentioned at all. And I called him and I said, so, George, help me out here. It has these 3 other names. And he goes, ma'am, I plumb forgot about them folks. I just plumb forgot.
just forgot about those siblings.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I don't even know if my father was married to that woman. And I said, yes, but is his name on their birth certificates? Well, yes. I said, then they're heirs to the same degree that you are.
Would that be the case, too, even if they weren't on the birth certificate, if the DNA is running through their veins and you can prove it?
Yes.
Okay.
They were still heirs to that estate. And he was none too happy about it because that meant he had to share with 3 more people.
Ah, I see. So some people have some different motivations for the family history research. And so the lawyer's looking for the truth and getting down, and then the people you get involved with have other ulterior motives, I should say.
There's a lot of greed in America. And they're all sure they're going to inherit $1 million. And most of the time, they're probably inheriting, by the time I'm done finding all the heirs, most are probably inheriting maybe $100 on average. We're not talking huge estates, but we want to get it dispersed to them if it's theirs.
So do you find that you're here at a family history conference, you're talking a lot to genealogists who are just looking about their own family. Are you finding that there are any major differences between the forensic type of research you do for the purposes that you do that really vary compared to what the family historian is looking for?
No, because I think the work I do also applies for doing our family reunions. And if your family has been disconnected, we still have to have all those same skills to bring all those family lines forward so that we can find our cousins and help us find collaborators to do more family history research. So it's all the same skill set, just using it for different purposes.
So when someone comes to you, a lawyer comes to you and says, okay, here's the challenge, here's the person, here's what we got to find, where do you start?
I start with what we know, and I take the information that the attorney has, whatever they've located. Sometimes it's a will, sometimes it is only a scrap of paper that they wrote on, my mother's name was. And I take all the little scraps of paper they locate and address books if they can find them. And then my goal then is to find out really who their family was.
And you also are working so often, it sounds like, with living people, which is sometimes a different skill set, of course, than we're using for our dead ancestors. What are some of the key tools that you're using for living people to locate them? Are you online a lot? Are you rummaging through courthouses? Where do you tend to be?
I am online a lot. I take the family back generally to about 1900. give or take 20 years, depending upon what generation this person is from. And then I bring all those lines forward in time, going through census records and census databases. I live in Oregon, but most of my research, I'm instantly out of Oregon after a generation because everybody came west, and I have to go research in another state. And every state has its own rules that you've got to work with for vital records. So I might have to find lots of workarounds just depending on the state I have to go get the research out of.
Now, I've interviewed private investigators here on the show, and some of them, cross over into the area that you're working. Are there databases that you're using that either you have to be licensed or that somehow are unique compared to what is free and available online?
No. Everything I use is the same thing I would use for a genealogy search. I'm not pulling any special databases at all.
Right. And I imagine, you were talking about how every state has different rules. And so one of the challenges we find is it's like you go to a new state that you have not searched in before, and how do you figure out, what the privacy laws might be or what's unique to that state? Do you ever have a core resource you kind of start with to be able to get the lay of the land?
Actually, I start with vitalrec.com because it will tell me who can get a copy of a birth record and who can't get a copy of a birth record or a death record. But that's where the simple plain English, either you can have this or you can't, and why, or who can get it.
And so they're still keeping that up pretty well, because I know I've used it over the years. I wondered if it was being kept fairly current. Do you feel like it's still a nice, up-to-speed resource?
I do, and they don't change the laws very quickly. This country is really, really bad about changing access to vital records. As we all know, we all fight to get more access. So I can only hope that when something changes, they will update it quickly. But most of the time, this country is not quick on changing its access to public records. So I've found so far it has been accurate for the work I've had to do.
So I have to ask, do you do research on your own family? Do you ever have time for that?
I allow myself, once a year I go to usually the FGS conference, and that's my week to do research on my own family. Because usually I pick the conference that has a state, or they're in a state, that I want to do research for my family in. And I'll usually stay on another week and go do on-site research because that's my favorite.
Yeah, really, the in-person. And I imagine for your professional side, you don't always have the luxury of being able to get there in person. You really kind of have to do everything remotely.
I do, or I have to hire researchers on the ground.
Okay.
And I've got quite the list of those people I've used over the years that are real reliable for me. And it's nice to have that resource to be able to pick up the phone or send an email and say, I need you to run to this courthouse as soon as possible. This is what I need.
That's good to remember because sometimes people hesitate to do that, or they think, oh, I should be able to do this on my own. But here we're talking to somebody who does this as a career, and you don't hesitate to rely on farming out, outsourcing some of those key tasks because in the long run, I imagine it's cost effective to get somebody who's there.
Very cost effective. And the other bonus is those people know right where to go,
right,
how quickly they can access that record. They don't waste time dinking around trying to figure out how do I access it. All I have to do is pick up the phone and say, I need this. And usually within 24 hours, I have exactly what I need. And it didn't take me more than a minute. Mm-hmm. It takes me longer to have the common chit-chat conversation with them than it took me to tell them what I really called for.
Exactly.
So, yes, I definitely believe in farming out requests.
Well, before I let you go, I'd love to hear another story again, just because I'm fascinated by the type of work that you get to do full-time. Tell us what else you've run into over the years.
Well, I've got one where I was contacted by an attorney, and he says, this woman tells me she's the sole heir to this estate, but I'd feel so much better if you told me she was the sole heir to this estate. And I called him back an hour later, and I said, so let's talk about this. And he said, how many? And I said, in the last hour, I found 8. He goes, well, okay, so maybe this man that she wanted to take and be his sole heir for, he had some very expensive artwork, and she wanted to claim all the artwork from his home. He's in the advanced stage of Alzheimer's. He couldn't, of course, participate in this conversation, but she was ready to go in and clean out his house. That
sounds like a good reason to, if nothing else, even if we don't get very far back in time, good idea to sit down and document all the known relatives and descendants before something happens to us. We hope it won't, but it can. Isn't that amazing? I'm sure he never expected that somebody would have to figure out who was related to him.
Well, it is sad because there's no place, especially for these older single people. They haven't left us a list of who their heirs are. Many haven't done their wills, like we all know we should. At least leave some idea of what you have and who you might like to have it, even if it's not a formal will. At least it gives us a clue to follow up on, so that if you can't speak for yourself, at least we can find documents that can help us.
Exactly. Great advice. And in fact, for all of you listening, I'm going to have links to my other podcast, the Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcast. We did an episode on that, and I've got the blank forms for the genealogical directive, where to put your things, as well as information about if you want to donate some of your own family history to places. There's things that you can do yourself. You don't even have to hire a lawyer, but you can get them on paper and make it available, and do it now while we're thinking about it. So we'll have all those resources in the show notes. And Leslie, I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you in person. I hope I see you again soon.
Thank you very much. This was really fun.
And now it's time for another segment of My Life and Times by Sunny Morton. She's the author of the book, My Life and Times, a guided journal for collecting your stories, which you can learn more about in the show notes. Here's Sunny.
Hi, I'm Sunny McClellan Morton, back this week with more about sharing our life stories. Last week, I talked about why genealogists should share their personal past, even as they investigate their family history. Now let's get right to the heart of the first question a life story writer comes up against. What stories should you tell? My favorite answer to this question is the ones you want to tell. Start with whatever's on your mind, whether it's the distant past or something that happened last week. Your enthusiasm for a story will be contagious to your readers. Next, think about how your life is unique. Did you grow up in a military family? Were you the only Jewish or Mormon kid in a Catholic town? Have you experienced adoption, widowhood, the life of a twin? Was your occupation uncommon? Don't forget, times change, and commonplace experiences become interesting to later generations. If you were a stay-at-home mom in the 1950s or even the 1970s, that was a totally different world from the one many know today. That makes it interesting. You don't just have one story to tell. Every life is made up of many different stories about work, love, loss, hardship, faith, luck, choices. Each of these stories has a beginning, middle, and end, with you as the main character or someone who observed the action and learned from it. Sometimes you don't even recall your stories in full or recognize how they changed you until you start trying to write them down. A life story writing journal can help you search your memories, record feelings or life lessons, and organize your stories logically. You can respond to questions about childhood. What kinds of food did your family eat? What were meal times like? What kind of chores did you do? How tidy was your home? What did you do for fun and what got you into trouble? Who did you play with? What were your favorite toys, childhood pets, and more? These sample questions all come from my new book, My Life and Times, a guided journal for collecting your stories. How many fragments of stories flit through your mind with just those questions? Now, those questions may remind you how much you don't remember. Don't worry. Next time, I'll talk about jogging your memories and stealing other people's memories if your own is insufficient. My tips are useful both for compiling your own memories and for collecting the life stories of a relative. Until then, this is Sunny McClellan Morton, personal and family history expert. I help others save their lives one story at a time. Check out my blog at www.yourlifein5minutes.com, which helps busy people tell their stories, or learn more about me at www.sunnymorton.com.
Well, thanks so much for joining me for episode 122 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. We covered a lot of stuff here. Now, I wanted to mention to you before I let you go that I mentioned at the top of the podcast episode that we were talking about iPad apps and that kind of thing. I've got an article coming out as well. In addition to the information that we're covering in the premium show, I have a toolkit article coming out in an upcoming Family Tree magazine issue. It's the January 2012 issue. They're going to start mailing it out to their subscribers on November 8th, so you can keep an eye out for that. And I'm going to be teaching how to use the iPad for your family tree at RootsTech. So if you are heading to RootsTech, you might want to tick that one off on your list. There are so many great classes there to choose from, but I am really looking forward to it because not only am I going to show you real time how to do various tasks using the iPad for family history, I'm actually going to deliver this presentation using my iPad. I'm very excited about this. I got myself a special little adapter cord that hooks up my iPad to my projector. This is so cool. Here's my goal. Do you think that I could do the rest of the presentations for the rest of the year without having to lug my laptop through the airport? That would be amazing. If I can accomplish that, I tell you, I'm going to be an iPad lover for life. That would be amazing. But we're going to try it out. So far it works really cool, and I am really excited about test driving that. And what better place to do it than a tech conference like RootsTech? So, all right. Well, hey, thank you so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.